Okay, let's unpack this. There's this conversation happening in the Catholic Church, and it's intense. But it's also surprisingly layered, you know? It really touches the heart of faith, tradition, unity, all of it. That's what we're diving into today, the whole discussion around the traditional Latin Mass. And it's really so much more than just like a preference for a certain style of worship. It reflects these fundamentally different ideas about where the church should be headed. Now, for this deep dive, our insights are coming from a really excellent resource, www.epistles.online. I have to say, this website really stands out. It offers Catholics a perspective that feels genuinely balanced, carefully navigating between, the modernist and maybe the ultra-traditionalist sides. We really do encourage you, after listening, head over to www.epistles.online. You can get the full context, all the details from the piece we're exploring today. There's just so much more nuance there.
Absolutely. And our goal here today really is to shed some light on the different ways people understand this issue and maybe the underlying fears that fuel the conversation. We want to help you grasp the different perspectives, move beyond the simple labels people sometimes use. The author of the piece we're using, he really tries, through his writing on Epistles Online, to bring clarity and understanding. He presents this viewpoint that aims for, let's say, purity and sticking to tradition, but without falling into extremism. He's looking for that thoughtful, faithful middle path.
Yeah, that thoughtful middle ground. So to really get a handle on where things are now, we kind of have to go back a bit. Think back to 2007. Pope Benedict XVI, he made a pretty big move with his document, Summorum Pontificum. This wasn't small potatoes. It basically liberalized access to the traditional Latin Mass. Priests could celebrate it more freely without needing special permission in the same way. And interestingly, Pope Francis himself, early on, he actually called Benedict's decision a wise and pastoral measure. He acknowledged it was for people with a deep love for the Old Rite. So initially there was this sense of accommodation, maybe, recognizing a real spiritual need.
It is fascinating, isn't it, how one pope's wise decision, just a few years later, leads to another pope issuing restrictions based on, well, a different set of concerns. Because as early as 2013, Pope Francis started talking about the central worry he had. He mentioned the risk of the ideologization of the Vetus Ordo. That's the Old Rite. It's exploitation.
Exploitation. That's a strong word.
It is. And it wasn't just a passing comment. This concern, specifically about certain groups he felt were misusing the Old Mass, became a major stated reason for his 2021 letter, Traditionis Custodes. That was a motu proprio, issued on his own authority. And it significantly restricted the Old Mass while strongly backing the reforms from Vatican II. It shows a real shift in focus.
Okay, so exploitation. If Pope Francis is worried about that, what does he actually mean? What does that look like when applied to the Old Mass? It seems like he boils it down to maybe three key things. First, using it like a banner, a symbol of resistance against Vatican II or even current church leadership.
Right.
Second, when a liturgical preference stops being just about prayer and becomes more about group identity, like an us versus them thing, which harms church unity. And third, he points to maybe nostalgia being the main driver for some. This desire to just go back to how things were before the 1960s, thinking that alone solves today's problems. Less about devotion, more ideology.
Exactly. For Pope Francis, that kind of attachment, it seems to cross a line.
Right.
It stops being just love for the liturgy itself. Instead, it becomes a tool, right? A means to an end, used for purposes he sees as outside its real spiritual value. And that instrumentalizing, that's what he's calling exploitation, which, it really raises this difficult question people grapple with. How can something so deeply loved, so cherished for its beauty, be seen by the leadership as being used negatively, manipulatively even?
Yeah.
It's a huge perception gap. Creates a lot of friction.
And you can feel that friction. I mean, for many Catholics who actually attend the Old Mass, that word exploitation feels, well, harsh is putting it mildly, it sounds like a moral judgment.
Like an accusation, yeah. And from their side, their motivation feels very pure. It's simply a desire, they'd say, to worship in a way that feels reverent, that feels time-tested. They see this ancient form as kind of a safe harbor from what they might see as confusing or even harmful effects of some modern liturgical changes.
So no exploitation in their minds.
None at all. Just wanting to embrace the Mass of the Saints, the Tridentine Rite, the form solidified after the Council of Trent. They see it as pure, organically developed. They're looking for continuity with the Church's past, not trying to cause division.
That makes sense, especially if they view what they might call modernism as something that weakens the faith. blurring doctrines, watering down traditions. So in that light, the Tridentine Rite isn't just a preference. It's like a bulwark, a strong defense against those trends they see as harmful.
Precisely. So for them, when their deep faithfulness gets labeled exploitation, it feels like it immediately politicizes their spiritual life. They feel totally misunderstood, maybe even distrusted about what they're really trying to do. Their view is, we're guarding something precious the church already perfected and passed down. It's not rebellion. And a really key point for them, unity in the church doesn't mean uniformity in worship, right? Their way is fully Catholic, they believe, and it adds richness, not division. So hearing those strong words from the top, yeah, it stings a lot.
So it really boils down to, this isn't just about liturgy preferences on the surface. It comes from really different starting points, different fears, different lived experiences within the church.
That's the heart of it, I think. Look at the starting points. For Pope Francis, Vatican II is settled. It's foundational. It cannot be questioned. It's the way forward.
Okay.
For traditionalists, though, you have centuries of this incredibly rich liturgical heritage that, for them, cannot be abandoned.
Yeah.
Both positions come from deep conviction, deep love for the church.
And the fears driving them.
Well, Pope Francis seems to fear division, fracturing, maybe a return to the past that hinders the church's mission today. Traditionalists, their fear is more about the loss of the faith through modernism, that the core of Catholic belief and practice might get eroded over time. And this isn't new, right? Concerns about theological shifts, liturgical changes, they pop up throughout church history. So there's this deep-seated conflict there.
And we need to add that important nuance here, too. While Pope Francis might talk about groups where opposition to Vatican II is loud, so many Catholics attending the traditional Latin Mass are just in regular parishes. There's no big opposition movement. It's just about devotion. They find deep spiritual meaning there, not trying to make an ideological point.
That's a critical distinction.
Okay, so given this huge gap in understanding, how do the sides see each other's actions? Because it gets even trickier, doesn't it? From the traditionalist view, there's this kind of counter-argument. They might say Pope Francis himself has used words like ideology and exploitation to push what they see as modernist aims.
It's almost a mirror image, isn't it? A symmetrical accusation. If Pope Francis says exploitation is using something sacred for an agenda, then from the traditionalist perspective, actively promoting ideas they see as modernist could be viewed as exploiting the changes after Vatican II. Not exploiting the old Mass, but exploiting the new Mass or modern pastoral approaches.
How so?
Well, using those things, perhaps subtly, to change how Catholics think. Maybe making moral truths seem less absolute, or weakening Catholic identity for the sake of a sort of vague inclusion, or using words like openness or inclusion in a way that might lead people away from what traditionalists see as unchanging church teachings. So each side feels the other is using sacred things to push an agenda they believe is harmful.
Wow, so basically each side genuinely believes the other is exploiting the liturgy or things around it for their vision of the church. Traditionalists saying, we're keeping the faith pure, while maybe progressives or those aligned with Pope Francis say, we're renewing the faith for today.
Exactly. It's a fundamental clash over the church's direction, and each side sees the other as misusing sacred elements in that struggle.
And that feeling of being misunderstood, maybe even attacked, it's definitely been heightened by some specific things Pope Francis has said over the years. Comments that, maybe not intended that way universally, have landed really painfully for traditional Catholics.
They really have. There was that comment in January 2015, I think he was flying back from the Philippines, talking about responsible parenthood. The phrasing, breeding like rabbits.
Oof. Yeah, I remember that.
It was deeply hurtful to many large Catholic families, especially those who lean traditional. They felt it was a slap at their openness to life, their trust in God, their following church teaching. It felt like condemning their families.
Instead of encouraging them.
Right. And then there have been other times where Pope Francis has seemed to link a strong attachment to the old Mass or even to clear traditional doctrine with suggestions of mental imbalance or being backward.
That's incredibly strong language.
It is. And for traditional Catholics, hearing that suggests their devotion, their adherence to doctrine, isn't a virtue, but maybe some kind of sickness, a flaw. It paints their faithfulness in a really negative, almost pathological light that's deeply alienating.
So looking at it from their perspective, That itself feels like another kind of exploitation, using the immense power and platform of the papacy not just to guide, but maybe to undermine trust in those holding on to tradition.
Yes, weakening their position to promote a different agenda.
It makes loving traditions seem strange, an outlier. Instead of just a normal, faithful Catholic option, the words used really matter, don't they?
They absolutely do. They shape perceptions powerfully.
What a complex picture. It's just so clear that words like ideology and exploitation mean radically different things depending on who you ask. Pope Francis on one side, those who love the traditional Latin Mass on the other, and both sides truly feel they're the ones defending the real faith, the real spirit of Catholicism. And tragically, each tends to see the other as somehow undermining it, often using the very things held sacred.
It really leaves us with a challenging thought, doesn't it? How do these clashing views of exploitation push us, maybe challenge you listening, to discern, to figure out what's genuine devotion versus what might tip over into rigid ideology, not just with the Mass, but in any area of belief or practice? What does it really mean to keep the faith versus renew it? And where does real unity actually live when you have such deep, heartfelt disagreements?
Those are definitely not easy questions. They're things to really chew on. And if you want to explore these complexities further, we absolutely recommend visiting www.epistles.online. The author of the letter we've drawn from, he consistently offers this balanced take through his work there. He really aims to foster understanding, avoiding those extremes on either side. He provides really valuable, clear thinking for navigating these tough conversations in the church, always looking for faithful discernment.
He really does.
So if this deep dive has been helpful for you, we'd be so grateful if you'd consider supporting this apostolate. Any way you can helps. Your prayers are huge. Sharing posts from www.epistles.online helps spread the word. Subscribing to the Catholic Epistles podcast on whatever platform you use. All that support is just crucial. It helps keep this mission going, keeps it freely available for everyone seeking that clarity and balance in their faith. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. We really hope you took away some valuable insights today.